In the headlines, South Korea's foreign minister stays pessimistic about the possibility of a Seoul-Tokyo summit, calling the prospects cloudy for now. Korea's September exports jump thanks to a pickup in demand in the U.S. and China, despite the strong Korean won. Pro-democracy protesters throng the streets of Hong Kong, marking the start of National Day, which is believed to be a critical day for the Umbrella Revolution. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the program. Coming to you live from Seoul, I am Kang Chery. The forecast for the South Korea-Japan summit remains cloudy. That's according to Seoul's top diplomat, who says the sun will shine again only if and when Tokyo acts with sincerity. Hwang Sung-hee reports.
The forecast for a summit between President Park Geun-hye and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe this year is cloudy. In an interview with Korean radio station CBS on Wednesday, Foreign Minister Yun Byung-se said a show of Japanese sincerity over historical issues remains a precondition to summit talks. He added that resolving the urgent issue of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women would be a good place to start. Yun said measures that can be accepted by the 55 former sex slaves still alive and the international community would be regarded as measures of sincerity. His remarks follow a string of meetings between the two countries this month. Yoon held private talks with Japanese ambassador to Korea, Goro Betcho, for the first time, while President Park welcomed former Japanese Prime Minister Yoshiro Mori, who brought a personal letter from Abe. The vice foreign ministers from Korea and Japan met in Tokyo Wednesday for their first strategic dialogue since President Park took office in February of 2013. The frequent diplomatic exchanges raised speculation that the two neighbors were preparing for what would be the first summit between their leaders, with November's APEC summit in Beijing as the likely stage. But President Park remains adamant she will not meet with Abe until he apologizes for Tokyo's wartime atrocities. As the two sides remain wide apart on the comfort women issue, the Korean foreign minister said it will likely be some time before the sun shines again. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea marked the Armed Forces Day today. President Park Geun-hye said thank you to her country's soldiers, while also reminding them that it's the military's role to contribute to a peaceful unification of the two Koreas. Our Sun Jung-in has more.
South Korea staged a massive ceremony on Wednesday to honor the military on its 66th Armed Forces Day. At the military headquarters in Daejeon, President Park Geun-hye started her speech by describing the current security situation on the Korean peninsula. She said the North had been raising tensions in the region while pursuing the development of its nuclear weapon and missile programs. She then urged Pyongyang to join Seoul's efforts to build trust and lay the groundwork for the potential unification of the divided Korean peninsula.
북한은 핵이 남북 관계 발전에 가장 큰 걸림돌임을 직시하고 하루속히 핵을 포기하고 국제사회에 책임 있는 일원이 되어야 합니다.
President Park also said the North's human rights violations should be addressed, an issue she placed emphasis on recently at the UN General Assembly. She added that this must start with South Korea's military, which should lead as a role model of human rights. She also urged the military to look inward, referring to a series of deaths blamed on bullying, harassment, and assaults of junior enlisted soldiers by their seniors in barracks.
이제 우리 군은 과거의 잘못된 관행과 적폐를 바로잡아서 새로운 정의의 강군으로 거듭나야 합니다.
President Park stressed that love and trust of the people is important for making a strong military and promised to do her utmost to improve the welfare of soldiers and their service environment. Sun Jung-in, Arirang News.
Washington says it's considering the idea of installing a U.S.-designed missile defense system in South Korea, but that idea seems to conflict with what Seoul's military has been saying. Our Connie Kim tells us more.
Seoul and Washington are at odds over whether the two will station a U.S. anti-missile defense shield in South Korea to deter any possible nuclear attacks from North Korea. The latest from South Korea is that no consultations have taken place between Seoul and Washington over the deployment of a missile battery in the south. The statement from Seoul's defense ministry was in response to comments from U.S. Deputy Secretary of Defense Robert Work, who said at a recent forum that there had been discussions on setting up a terminal high-altitude area defense or THAAD system to deter North Korea's missile threats.
We are considering very carefully whether or not to put a THAAD in South Korea. We're doing site surveys. We're working with the government of South Korea now to determine if that is the right thing to do.
The THAAD missile defense system can strike down medium and intermediate range ballistic missiles in midair. Deputy Secretary Work underscored that the system, while complicated to set up, would become an important part of regional defense. One THAAD battery was deployed to Guam last year. The senior U.S. official also noted that Washington is well aware of the possible backlash involved in deploying the system in South Korea.
We've emphasized to both China and to Russia that these are not strategic anti-ballistic missiles, that they essentially they're essentially designed to address regional threats.
Washington has been considering stationing the U.S. anti-missile defense shield since 2011. The idea of a deployment has some word in Seoul that it could be an attempt from Washington to get other Asian allies to join its missile defense system. The two countries are expected to hold consultations over stationing the U.S.-designed defense system at the upcoming security consultative meeting in Washington this month. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Korea's lawmakers are back in action after months of contentious gridlock over the special ferry bill. Today, they continued to review bills, but our Kim Young-gil reports we still have to wait and see whether the parties can bridge their months-long gap in their opinions.
The National Assembly, after being gridlocked for months over a bill designed to investigate the causes of April's ferry disaster, is back in business. Their first act on Tuesday night after reaching an agreement on the special legislation was to pass 91 bills. Lawmakers from the rival parties returned on Wednesday morning to open sessions of parliamentary standing committees and began reviewing hundreds of pending bills. Over the next month, they will conduct parliamentary audits of government offices, pass series of anti-corruption bills, and finally push through the one piece of legislation that has kept the rival parties at odds since the spring, the Seoul ferry bill. Tuesday's agreement ends the standoff at Parliament, but not the controversy. The representatives for the families of Danon High School students killed in the April ferry tragedy have voiced their strong opposition to the deal reached by the ruling and opposition parties. It's essentially the same agreement made on August 19th, although the rival party floor leaders agreed to add another clause. That clause states that both rival parties will jointly recommend 4 independent counsel candidates to President Park Geun-hye, who will choose one of them to lead the fact-finding committee in charge of investigating the ferry disaster. The option of allowing the victims' families to participate in the process will be discussed later on. The victims' families have been firm in saying they want more power in the nominating process. While the National Assembly is back at work, the actions of the lawmakers over the coming weeks and their ability to move beyond their differences over recent months will determine whether parliamentary affairs truly are normalized. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, join Kang Chery for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on Arirang TV.
Human Rights Council headquarters in Geneva on Thursday, finding ways to persuade.
Korea posted a trade surplus for the 32nd straight month in September, with exports edging up 7% on year. This is attributed to a strong performance of main export items such as steel, computers, and machinery to markets like the United States and China. In particular, outbound shipments to China went up for the first time in 5 months. A new tech giant in Korea's internet service industry has officially been created with today's launch of what will now be called Daum Kakao will zero in on Naver, the #1 player in Korea at this point. Our Hwang Sung-hee tells us more.
It's official. Daum Kakao, born through the merger of Korea's second-largest internet portal operator Daum and the country's biggest messaging application firm KakaoTalk, launched business on Wednesday. The new tech giant aims to become a mobile live platform leader based on Kakao's 37 million users and Daum's contents.
Our key business strategy is connecting people to people and information, online and offline businesses, and people and objects.
Daum and Kakao have been preparing to launch a united entity since May this year when they announced their merger. Kakao has been diversifying its business portfolio, introducing services like Bank Wallet Kakao, a mobile platform that provides small-sum financial transactions and mobile payments. Daum has been focusing on its role as a search engine, launching specialized services for better search results. The merger will create the biggest company on the country's tech-heavy Kosdaq once it's listed in mid-October, with the entity's market cap expected to reach 10 trillion won, or roughly $9.5 billion. But analysts say the listing on the Kosdaq marks only the beginning.
Right after Daum Kakao is listed on the country's secondary bourse, investors will ask the company to shift toward the main bourse. Kosdaq is an entry market for newcomers, not for already huge companies like Daum Kakao.
The merger points to a shift in Korea's internet portal dynamics, currently led by the country's top portal operator Naver, which takes up 80% of the domestic market share. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Tens of thousands of demonstrators are continuing to rally in Hong Kong, vowing to keep up with the protest until Beijing grants the territory free elections. For more, Paul Iya is joining us from the News Center. Paul, a record number of supporters have taken to the city streets today, which also happens to mark China's National Foundation Day.
That's right. Both the government and activists are bracing for a showdown on this National Day holiday. But these pro-democracy protests appear to be staying peaceful, despite the narrative that Beijing's state media is portraying. This as Chinese authorities have reportedly detained more than a dozen activists across mainland China. Our Kim Min-ji has the details.
Pro-democracy demonstrations swelled in size on Wednesday with the start of National Day, which marks the founding of Communist China in 1949. Tens of thousands of people braved heavy rain and thunder overnight to continue what is being dubbed the Umbrella Revolution, an act of civil disobedience that authorities have called illegal. Hong Kong's chief executive rejected calls by student leaders to address the crowd, which he said must be immediately dismantled.
The central government won't be swayed by illegal activities. This illegal protest will not force the central government to go back on its decision on August 31st.
The Hong Kong government attended a ceremony marking the National Day amid continued protests. Demonstrators want Leung to step down as chief executive, and they want universal suffrage in Hong Kong's 2017 elections, with Beijing abandoning plans to vet candidates for the top government post. If their demands aren't met, they are considering expanding their occupation of city streets.
If a country does things that are right and its people are convinced, naturally people will come out and celebrate with it on the country's birthday. But now this is not the case. Even though it's National Day, many people are standing up and telling this government, we are not satisfied with you.
Some have voiced concerns that the protests could become a second Tiananmen Square massacre.
Beijing has a final say in everything in Hong Kong, and Beijing has a record of crackdown on peaceful demonstration with violence. So given China's record, we have no trust at all. And I think the worst thing that would happen is a second Tiananmen massacre.
The large-scale demonstrations, which began over the weekend, are the worst since China resumed control of Hong Kong from Britain in 1997. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And turning to the Middle East, Paul, British warplanes have launched their first airstrikes against Islamic State targets in Iraq as part of U.S. efforts to wipe out this extremist group. How did this military operation play out on the ground?
Well, Britain's defense ministry released on Tuesday a video showing aerial attacks on what it has said to have been IS weapon caches in an armed truck in northwestern Iraq. The mission came 4 days after UK's parliament approved the country to join the US and France in supporting Kurdish forces holding off militants on the ground. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Tony Abbott said on Wednesday that Australia will join the fight against the radical insurgents in Iraq, but stressed it would initially play a support role.
We have not yet made the final decision to commit our forces to combat, but Australian aircraft from today will start flying over Iraq in support of Allied operations. Australian airstrikes await final clearances from the Iraqi government and a further decision by our own.
Australia has been on high alert for attacks by homegrown militants returning from fighting in the Middle East, raising its threat level to high and undertaking a series of anti-terrorism raids in major cities this past month. This as the growing U.S.-led coalition continues to bombard IS targets in Syria near the Turkish border.
And shifting back to Asia, Japan has been struggling to climb out of its prolonged economic slump, reflate its economy. And a new survey shows that industry leaders there are giving mixed signals on the direction of this economy. Break down the numbers for us.
Well, Japan's headline index for large manufacturer sentiment improved by 1 point in September on quarter to plus 13, which was able to beat market expectations. Despite the boost in confidence in heavy industries, the Japanese service sector was less than optimistic. According to a survey by Japan's central bank, business sentiment in the service sector plunged 6 points at the end of last month, marking the sharpest decline since 2011. The figure suggests that some companies are still struggling to shake off the impact of a sales tax hike back in April. However, in response, the government said the overall results were encouraging.
Looking at the results as a whole, the pullback in demand following the sales tax hike is easing. According to monthly report, the economy is continuing its path towards moderate growth.
Analysts say the mixed data may do little to relieve pressure on Japanese policymakers to expand fiscal stimulus measures in order to jumpstart the economy. It also comes as Prime Minister Shinzo Abe faces a crucial decision on whether to push ahead with a second sales tax hike for next year.
And that's exactly what the market is watching for. And finally, the global software giant Microsoft has unveiled its new operating system called Windows 10. I did a little digging, found that there are more than 1.5 billion computers worldwide that run on Windows. So many are wondering what's different in this update.
Well, the biggest change you'll likely notice is the return of the iconic Start button menu, which many PC users have demanded back, and it also marks a departure from the touch interface in Windows 8. Microsoft laid out the details in an early technical preview at a low-key press event in San Francisco on Tuesday. The U.S. company said it was skipping version 9 to signify the leap towards a unified operating system, which would run on both mobile devices such as smartphones as well as desktop PCs. To that end, top Microsoft executives said Windows 10 would be the company's most comprehensive platform yet.
When you ran an app at home or on the go, some you sit 10 feet away from and you use with a controller or gestures. Some are mostly touch pen, some mouse keyboard. Some devices switch between input types. We're not talking about one UI to rule them all. We're talking about one product family. We're a tailored experience for each device.
The announcement comes as Windows 8 has only gained about 20% market share among organizations since being released 2 years ago, according to research firm Forrester. Microsoft says its next flagship OS will be released next year as it launches a shift in its business model towards mobile and cloud services. Charity?
And honestly, here's hoping that it won't be another Vista. All right, Paul, thank you so much for those updates. We'll see you back here in just about 2 hours.
Hello and welcome. I'm Stephen Che with your Asian Games update. And starting with boxing, the women's flyweight, lightweight, and middleweight divisions took to the ring to decide their champions for the second Asiad ever. Now, Indian flyweight Chung Ne-jang Hamangt won her country's first gold in the sport, while North Korea's middleweight Geun-hye did the same, defeating her Chinese opponent. Now, meanwhile, China's Yin Junhwa defeated South Korean Park Jin-ah in the lightweight finals for the gold. But Park had much to be proud of, fighting her way to South Korea's best finish in women's boxing to date. And from punches to the kicks, it's day 2 of Taekwondo. And flying to the results, South Korea's women put the axe kick down on the competition. Now, Kim So-hee woke up in the third round to defeat Taiwan's Lin Wang-ting 10-4 for the under 46 kilo gold. In the under 57 kilo division, Lee Ah-reum beat Mayu Hamada 6-4 for her own golden finish. And on the men's side, Iran's Mahdi Korabakshi topped the under 80 kilo division. Meanwhile, despite a late run by his opponent, South Korea's Cho Chul-ho managed to hold on to take the over 87 kilo gold. And moving on, rhythmic gymnastics are underway for its 2-day run, kicking off with the individual qualifications and team finals. Now, in the first of 2 groups earlier in the day, China's Deng Shenwei topped the individual charts, while Uzbekistan held the lead in the team category. And later on, the second rotation had South Korean top star Son Yeon-jae ready to go. And right now, she leads in 3 of 4 apparatuses, and South Korea currently stands at 4th. I'll have the complete results by 10 o'clock. Meanwhile, we go to women's football, where the gold medal match is currently going on between North Korea and Japan. North Korea actually leads this one in the first half, 1-0. But in the earlier bronze medal match, it was South Korea going up against Vietnam. Now, the first half lacked a quality finish there, but the second half didn't disappoint. The flurry kicked off when Kwon Han-er's 54th minute winner went into the left post, opening the gates for 2 more by Chung Seol-bin and Park Hee-young, and the ladies won their second bronze in a row, beating Vietnam 3-0. Now more ladies finals, this time in handball. South Korea returned to the finals after a hiatus in the 2010 games, facing Japan for the gold to put around their neck. Their goalkeeper Park Mi-ra made some clutch 6-meter saves, while Ryu Eun-hee led the offense with 8 goals in 10 tries. And South Korea returned to the gold medal platform after soundly beating Japan, making that their 6th handball gold in the Asiad. Meanwhile, Kazakhstan edged out China 17-13 for the bronze medal. And finally, in Greco-Roman wrestling, Kim Hyun-woo wins his first Asiad gold in the 75 kilo weight class, there. So congratulations to him. And that's all I have for now. I leave you now with the medal standings. I'll see you later.
Hello and welcome. Most regions are enjoying partly cloudy and breezy autumn conditions, while some regions down south are getting light sporadic showers. On Thursday, rain is forecast for some regions, including Seoul. Also, you can expect chilly and brisk morning conditions through the rest of the week. Now, this Friday is Korea's National Foundation Day, and showers are in store along the eastern coast of Gangwon province, but the weekend looks to be sunny and clear for most regions. Over in Incheon, some unwelcoming news that rain is forecast there, which could affect Team Korea's final football match. On to tomorrow's readings. Seoul hits 22, Daegu 23, Gwangju and Busan 25. As for other regions, Jeju hits 24, Dokdo 21, Mount Kumgang 14. That's all for now. I'll be back with more updates after 10.
Thank you very much, Po Kyung, and that will do it for this edition of Arirang News. Thanks for watching.